Welcome back. It's a question we've talked about a few times, and we wanted to touch in on it again today. What will President Donald Trump's legacy be? Could the peace deal just reached in the Middle East be his most important and enduring accomplishment? We're talking about that this morning with Dr. Thomas Balcerski, a presidential historian and professor at Eastern Connecticut State University. Welcome back.
Thank you, Eric.
We had you here on this topic in the past, and we thought it would be a good time to check in on it. Obviously, monumental news coming from the Middle East. Yeah. President Trump flying over to give an address in Israel. Worldwide attention coming to this deal that the Trump administration brokered to bring peace to Gaza. Obviously, historians are more long-view guys than short-term guys, but we asked you here now anyway. What are your thoughts in the initial days on what this will mean to his legacy?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we have to give credit where credit's due. This may be the defining moment of his second term and thus of his 8 years, we hope, in office. Presidential peace deals are very often kind of the signature moments of the foreign policy of an administration. And while this is just one of several wars that President Trump is claiming he is brokering peace in, there are still other conflicts around the world that he still could have a hand, the most obvious one being, of course, the war in Ukraine. Part of this is wrapped up in President Trump's, of course, quest, I'll say, for a Nobel Prize, and the most recent awards bypassed him, and his administration was very critical of this. But it must be said that this latest peace brokering and that the possibility of future peace brokerings around the world would certainly burnish that standing and that reputation. The last president to broker a deal in the Middle East and receive a Nobel Peace Prize for it was President Jimmy Carter, recently passed away. Of course, President Obama also received a Nobel Peace Prize, and there were two others before that, President Wilson and Roosevelt. So he would be in very good company, President Trump would be, to win a prize like that, and certainly this year's actions will very much bear out whether he does so next year.
Some of the trouble historically, and certainly in modern years with presidents, is that many of the causes for the lack of peace in the Middle East date back thousands and thousands of years, and it's very difficult in modern terms to overcome some of that animosity. Will there be importance placed on this being a lasting peace, or will the mere fact that the hostages were returned and that peace was declared be enough to burnish his legacy?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, relatively speaking, the ceasefire that's been signed is very much a short-term solution. And even some, headlines coming out of the Trump administration suggest that he's ready to allow the military conflict to continue in Gaza at a moment's notice. So while this is being definitely hailed as a major achievement, it seems like it's still very much a tenuous one as compared historically to the kinds of peace deals that presidential Nobel Prizes have yielded. They were more lasting. The Camp David Accords, again going back to President Carter, were significant and have maintained the peace between Israel and Egypt now for decades. This ceasefire, this truce, really doesn't quite yet have the historical legacy, I think, making in it. And that's where I think the next several months of negotiations really will show whether this is going to be a lasting peace.
Let's talk about some other things going on with the Trump administration. One is the government shutdown. Yeah. And they'll be quick to tell you it's the Democrats' fault. The Democrats will, of course, be quick to blame Trump and the Speaker of the House. Where does that fall into history? Are these things that we look back and say, aha, there was a shutdown under Clinton, under this? Or is this something that once it's over, it kind of goes away?
Well, this is our fifth government shutdown. It should be said President Trump holds the record for the longest governmental shutdown. He may surpass it with this one. That was over 30 days in his first term. President Clinton had 2 shutdowns, and President Obama had a shutdown. So we can say on average we're due for a couple more weeks of this, it would seem. On the other hand, it is the case, too, that much like the last shutdown under President Trump, it's a Republican-controlled House and Senate. It should be remembered that both houses are in the hands of Republicans. The optics, though, and the kind of political messaging around this do not favor Democrats. Just because the majority is in the Republican hands, it does not necessarily, in the public mind, mean they're blameless. In fact, I have to say the messaging has been very effective trying to pin the blame on an intransigent and obstinate Democratic minority and not coming to the table. So I think it's very much the same setup as the last shutdown. Again, it was President Trump's term, and again, it was both houses controlled by Republicans. The rules of the Senate, though, are really the sticking point here. And you want to talk about a historical problem that has not been addressed. It is that the government is held hostage over this one rule that essentially allows a minority that is not the supermajority, i.e., 60 senators has to be reached in order to even call a vote.
So that's what's holding things up now. Yeah. You mentioned the Republicans being in control. Obviously, we're heading towards midterms next fall. Yeah. And as we head into the midterm elections, is that something that could change Trump's legacy if he were to lose control of one or the other or both chambers?
Absolutely. The midterm elections for second-term incumbents are usually disastrous, and they've never, in the last, I think, 4 administrations, gone in the way of the incumbent. So on the one hand, you could say it would be bucking a trend to see Republicans continue to control both the House and the Senate. Now, there are some electoral things happening behind the scenes that are a bit shady, and in some ways redistricting. California and Texas seem to be battling it out to try to redistrict both their states to favor their entrenched parties, Republican and Democratic. So it's a little bit different than, say, the last several administrations in their second term, but it would be a major accomplishment if President Trump could keep the Congress through his entire term, and I think would again allow his legislative agenda to be even more powerful.
We only have about a minute left, and that's super unfair because of what I'm going to ask you. Steve Bannon, sometimes Trump advisor, came out and said that he's already planning for Trump to run in 2028. Trump famously met with Democrats in the Oval Office and put Trump 2028 hats on the Oval Office on the desk. As a presidential historian, are you going to be watching that closely, I would imagine?
We've had several presidents in the past try to run for a third term, but now we have a constitutional amendment that prohibits it. Now, there actually are, I would say, serious attempts underway to repeal this amendment, and the public should consider it. It's nothing to say that an amendment is for forever. We've seen one repeal, the Prohibition Amendment. Who's to say the third term amendment can't be repealed? But in terms of presidential history, it would be unprecedented to challenge a constitutional amendment in this way. So that would break a precedent and might certainly affect a legacy. But I have to say, my own read is that President Trump is a master troller, and he's doing a very good job with this one. It is certainly one of the things that riles up Democrats and gets people angry at the thought. And yet, at the same time, he's also been asked in other interviews who his successor might be, and he's not yet indicated that. But it's a long way of saying that I actually think this is another masterclass in politicking by the president.
All right, very good. Well, that's why we bring you in. You're the expert. We appreciate that opinion. And maybe as we watch all this, it's a good thing Prohibition was we might need a cocktail as we take in the news. We appreciate you being here. We hope we'll have you back again.
Thank you.